Hey guys, and welcome back to this week's episode of the All Love, All Hate Fantasy Football Podcast. This is episode 13, and we are currently in the semifinals of the playoffs. It's getting things are starting to get crazy now. Championship week is just 7 days away. Joining me this episode is Payton Hedrick and Jacob Reeder as always, and I'm of course Chris Langley, and we're going to hop right in to weekly words.
All right, guys, we're going to get into the first segment for this week's episode. You all know that is weekly words. I'm sure everyone is aware that COVID has struck the NFL pretty hard last week and maybe even getting worse this week when it looked like it really couldn't get any worse. Some of the COVID protocols have kind of been not necessarily lifted, but alleviated some of the stress in these lineups and helped out a little bit. Guys can come back sooner, assuming they are, vaccinated and are showing no symptoms or at least healthy enough to go out there and be on the field. Everybody's health is definitely still the number one concern, and they don't want to, spread anything, but it is getting a little bit easier for some of these guys to come back. And a lot of these guys really are affecting fantasy rosters, and it's kind of hard when you're going into most people's semifinal, or it's the semifinal week for fantasy. So it's pretty tough. And one of the teams that is, really hard, these two guys just had amazing weeks last week, and that is Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. And those are two guys that a lot of people, look to week to have great games because they're some of the best guys at their respective positions. So this is going to be hard for a lot of people, especially the people that have, both of these guys like myself. I have Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill, and I am also playing this week to go to the championship. So this is going to be hard for me. But there are some guys to rebound off of this, Byron Pringle. I'm sure he's not really picked up in many leagues. Mecole Hardman, I'm sure he's available in some leagues. And these are like great pivots, like great streams for this week. They're really talented guys, lightning fast, great hands. So assuming these guys don't play, which they still have an opportunity with these slightly lax rules that they have now for COVID protocols. They're not out, but there's a good possibility. There are a couple other players to be noted that are on the COVID list this week. Austin Eckler, Brandon Cooks, Marquez Valdez-Scantling. Who else? Cole Beasley. So there's a lot of guys, and there's a lot of guys that you can pivot off of that and step up. Something that I may recommend, if at all possible, this late in the season is maybe talking to your league mates and, adding like a safe drop guy, like a safe drop candidate. You announce to everybody, hey, I'm dropping, say it's a second string quarterback, because you don't want to like drop any of your guys, especially in dynasty leagues like ours. Some guys you just really don't want to drop. So maybe offer that up as an idea, as having, a safe drop or an extra IR spot, because I know on ESPN, guys that are put on the COVID list are actually able to go into your IR spot because they are marked as out. So it's going to be tough these next couple of weeks. It's said that it comes in, fantasy, and hopefully it doesn't get any worse. But with all that being said, let's get to you, Jacob.
Yeah, it's unfortunate about all the COVID outbreaks that have been going through the NFL and other sports that going on too this past couple weeks. But we got even more guys dealing with injuries and dealing with coming back from injury and suspension. So Elijah Mitchell, who was out last week with a concussion and a knee injury, is now going to be out this Thursday because they play an early game. So he's going to be out this week in the second week of the fantasy playoffs, most people's semifinal game. So you got to be watching out for that. Jeff Wilson Jr., I believe, got most of the work last week, so he'd be a good turn to if you need a new running back because you have Elijah Mitchell, or a flex spot if you need to fill one. Also, Antonio Brown, as we talked about, I believe last week or the week before, They were deciding whether they were going to keep him or release him. He's had some off the field antics with faking his COVID vaccination card and stuff like that, and had some injuries earlier this season. But he is practicing, and with their injuries that we'll talk about in a little bit, I think they'll most likely be keeping him. And he could even be really good for fantasy if you need him on your squad. Langley, what you got?
Yeah, like you said, they're dealing with a lot of injuries right now in Tampa Bay. Antonio Brown, we know what he's capable of. So, I mean, you can expect him to put up some good numbers, especially because the Bucs will be without some key guys, some for the season and some maybe just for this week. And on that note, in the Saints matchup last week, Chris Godwin and Leonard Fournette both got injured alongside Mike Evans, but both Godwin and Fournette have been placed on IR. Godwin towards ACL. He is out for the season. Fournette, on the other hand, will just be missing the regular season. He's expected to be back for the playoffs, according to reports that I saw. But that does mean he is out for the fantasy football season, which means Ronald Jones is going to be potentially a key add on the waiver wire if he's available. And Jacob, I think you're getting to that later in the episode with your hot take. But joining Ronald Jones alongside a couple of the other running backs in Tampa Bay, the Bucs have recently signed Le'Veon Bell. So we're going to be seeing a Brown-Bell reunion of sorts in Tampa Bay. I don't know how much Bell is really going to be used in Tampa Bay at this point. We thought he would be used a lot with the Ravens when J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards went out, but it ended up becoming Latavius Murray and Devontae Freeman, who took over the role of the RB1 and 2 in Baltimore, and Bell was later released. But yes, we'll see. I mean, especially because the Bucs are still vying for the first round bye in the playoffs. I mean, this could be a very interesting move here. If you are in dire need of a running back, definitely look for Ronald Jones, maybe even Le'Veon Bell, because you never know how the system's going to work in Tampa Bay. But that will conclude this week's segment of Weekly Words, and we'll hop right into a Girl Talk / Bourbon Bowl combination, where we're going to talk about the two semifinal matches in our fantasy football league, as well as what I like to call the Toilet Bowl. See y'all in a moment.
We're going to get into our semifinal and toilet bowl matchups in our own Dynasty Fantasy Football League. It's very interesting. Payton and I are both in the playoffs still. We made it through last week pretty easily for me, and with this by the skin of his teeth with Payton's team beating Trey. But I'm going to talk about the toilet bowl. We have our own Chris Langley, and Antonio Rivera is also one of our guests previously. They are playing in the toilet bowl, and whoever loses this game, they were both also the two lowest seeds from the regular season also. Whoever loses this game will have to do the Buffalo Wild Wings challenge, where they have to eat the hottest wings they have there. It'll be interesting to watch. We'll have to wait and see who scores the lowest amount of points, as they both have done that a lot this season. So we'll have to wait and see how they fare this last week of their consolation bracket. Langley, what do you think is going to happen in your game, and what are you excited to see?
Well, who do you think is going to win first?
Yeah, I think I'll go with Antonio. He's got a little bit higher level talent with all the injuries you've had. So I think he, with like Kyler Murray and guys like that, can get it done. Maybe one of them will have a boom week like OBJ or something like that and help him out.
Yeah, as much as I hope to win, so I don't have to do the punishment that I came up with, believe it or not. I just have so many injuries, and George Kittle's finally coming to form. And I think the Cardinals are looking for vengeance next week, even though they're not playing the Lions again. I think they're just going to try and demolish their next opponent. So I think Antonio is going to win. And I'm going to see if Buffalo Wild Wings can let me bring in 2 gallons of milk, because I'm going to probably need it. It's going to be bad. Payton, who do you got? And then you can get to your Bourbon Bowl.
All right. So in this apparent toilet bowl matchup for the battle for last place, it's going to be interesting because it's basically probably whoever scores 80 points in our half-point PPR league, but I think it's probably going to be Tony, assuming he sets his lineup and actually tries, which latter half of the season he really wasn't, because he's going for, good draft picks. But yeah, I think Tony will squeak out win, probably under 80 points scored. But anyway, getting into my Bourbon Bowl, which will be Jacob Reeder and the Painted Dogs versus Sean's Sleepyheads. And Sean, they are the semifinal game opposite side of the bracket that I am on. So if I happen to win, I'll be playing the winner of this game. And it's gonna be pretty close. But I just want to take a look at Sean's team for a second here. And his team is great. I mean, they've really been firing on all cylinders. But he's without oh, actually, no, never mind. Scratch that. He has a squad that's very touchdown dependent, if you ask me. Like being James Conner and Aaron Jones being his two starting backs. And Aaron Jones kind of worries me because it seems like he really hasn't been getting the ball as much and not really seeing those goal line opportunities like he was seeing earlier in the season and much of his career. So that kind of worries me. But then on the other end, you got James Conner, who is, the red zone beast. I think he's got like 16, 17 touchdowns this season. He's been playing great. And oddly enough, they're playing each other, Arizona and Green Bay. But his running backs worry me a little bit. And, we've seen Tom Brady not have great weeks, but, he's playing Carolina, should be fine. Cooper Kupp, MVP this year for fantasy at least. Justin Jefferson, another touchdown-dependent guy. Rob Gronkowski, he's a great target being with Tom Brady, very touchdown-dependent. Jamar Chase, he's going to play well. The ball's in his hands, but you really need a touchdown from him. Russell Gage, who is, slowly marking himself to be the number one receiver in Atlanta, which I don't know how happy you are about that, considering they really haven't had that great of a season. They really underwhelmed this year. I thought the addition of Kyle Pitts, and that would be like a 1-2 punch with Kyle Pitts and Calvin Ridley. But, Calvin Ridley has stopped playing football for a minute. He's taken a step back. Everybody knows about that. And Kyle Pitts just really hasn't been put into the offense as much as I thought he would. Taking a look at the other side of the matchup, we got Justin Herbert, Joe Mixon, Jonathan Taylor, Deebo Samuel, Zach Ertz, Antonio Gibson. Like, these are all guys that, as of recently, have just, found their groove. Another, main point of interest right here on this team is Jonathan Taylor. I mean, he's been great. He's been phenomenal this year. And really, I think all he needs is these three, or he's got 4 running backs, actually. These guys are most likely going to find the end zone, and it's going to be an interesting matchup. It's definitely going to be close, but I think that Jacob does squeak this one out. I know his team's been on a little bit of a hot streak, and so is Sean. Sean's had a great season. Same record, playing each other in semis. It's going to be a great game, but I do think that, the young guys, Justin Herbert, Jonathan Taylor, I think they squeak it out, and I think Jacob moves on to the championship this year. And might I add, these were 2 guys that were, similar teams last year. I mean, Sean did a few upgrades, and Jacob had a pretty good draft, but these are guys that were not in the playoffs last year in our dynasty league. So it's pretty cool seeing just them move up into the playoffs and be successful. And now one of them is going to be in the championship. So definitely be watching that. It's going to be a great matchup. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this week. It'll be interesting playing Sean, which I have played him twice this season already because of the way our buys work and such. I lost to him the first game of the season and then beat him the second time pretty easily, I believe. But it'll be an interesting one. Cooper Kupp helped him out to win last week when his team wasn't having a great week. But, I know he's going to come to play, so we'll have to watch and see. I'm gonna obviously pick my team just because I believe in them, and I think we're going to be able to get it done and go to the championship after not even making the playoffs last year. Langley, what do you think about our game?
Yeah, this game is, well, I think it all comes down to Sean's boomer bust mentality. I mean, we saw it last week. He had like 50 points. Personally, Sean can either score 160 points or 70 points. He barely put up 51 last week until Cooper Kupp had an amazing game, as always. So I think I'm going to go with Jacob here, just be the safe pick. He's going to be without, Sean's going to be without Chris Godwin. You don't know what's going to happen. So I'll go with Jacob and him going to the championship round where he will be facing who I think is going to win my Bourbon Bowl, which we'll get to right now. So my Bourbon Bowl is Payton versus Ashton. This is the 1 seed versus the 4 seed. Actually, flip-flop that. Payton's the 4 seed. Ashton's the 1 seed. So Payton, I consider one of the best teams in the league. And Ashton has been kind of one of the weaker 1 seeds we've seen. Then again, it is our second season, so he's weaker than last season, I guess you could say. And Ashton's dealing with some injuries, but Payton, as we talked about earlier in the show, he might be screwed because if Hill and Kelsey can't come back, that's 2 big key losses, especially on a team that when Payton does not have as much depth as other teams have. But it's really going to come down to just who stays healthy at this point. And I think Payton could still pull off the upset here. And we could be seeing a championship between 2 of the hosts on this podcast. It'll be fairly interesting. Jacob, what do you got?
Yeah, I'm excited to watch their game too, just because of how they have fared this season with Ashton being so hot in the beginning and then losing some guys, but still being able to win somehow, and then Payton just kind of being up and down and scoring a lot of points and then a little points. So it'll just be interesting to watch and see. Hopefully their guys are healthy, just because you don't want to see guys not be healthy or be injured. But it'll be interesting, especially if both of them are having a bunch of dudes out like they might and most likely will have. The depth really helps, and I have a lot of depth, and a couple other teams do too, so it doesn't hurt us as much, but they don't have as much, and we'll just have to see how it fares. I'm gonna pick Peyton. I think he's more well-rounded, especially when Ashton's not healthy, with not having Derrick Henry and Chris Carson and Elijah Mitchell now too. So I'm gonna pick Peyton, and I look forward to facing either of them, hopefully in the championship. Peyton, what do you think about your game? How's it going to go? And are you excited to watch to see what happens?
I think, honestly, I hate picking myself because I think that's kind of a weird thing to do. I don't like doing that. But his team has just seen some tough injuries, losing Chris Carson, Derrick Henry. And then Chris Carson, Derrick Henry, and then he got Elijah Mitchell. Now he's out, playing tomorrow. Tyler Higbee's out, Cole Beasley's out. Mike Evans, I believe, was still questionable because we saw him leave the game early last weekend. So I just don't see Darrell Henderson, DJ Dallas, Hunter Renfrow, and KJ Osborne really being able to do it. When I'm not saying it's impossible, he's got good a chance as any, because I could quite possibly be without Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, where I would have to be starting, Evan Ingram, and then, I may have to flex Jeff Wilson Jr. or Marvin Jones, Donovan Peoples-Jones, unless somehow, DeAndre Swift comes back. But I don't really see that being likely. But with all that being said, I think I'll be able to figure out how to kind of move my lineup around, figure it out. And I think that I'll get the win. I hope so, but, anything could happen. Who knows? Maybe even more guys end up on the COVID list. Maybe games get moved around and more guys play that we weren't expecting, or more guys miss. You don't know. So it's going to be interesting. But I think if I had to choose a winner, I'd go ahead and say that I'm going to win this one. With all that being said, I think we are going to close out Bourbon Bowl and get into our last segment, which will be hot takes.
That's a spicy meatball.
All right, guys, welcome back to Hot Takes. We are now all 3-9 heading into this week. I got a win last week. I said Tom Brady would throw less than 3 touchdowns. He threw 0, take it and run. Jacob and Payton, however, did not win their hot takes, so we're all tied up at 3-9. This week, I'm going to go back to the quarterback position instead. I'm actually going to say how many touchdowns I expect a certain player to score. I have Aaron Rodgers throwing 3 touchdowns or more versus the Cleveland Browns on Saturday. Jacob, what do you got?
Yeah, it was an unfortunate occurrence last week, but we'll try to get back on track this week. I'm going to go with Ronald Jones, who's getting a good opportunity now that Leonard Fournette is on IR. And Leonard Fournette was popping off for fantasy-wise and just doing great. And I believe they targeted him like 10 times in the first quarter or something. And they were just using him in every part of the field. But now Ronald Jones is the show, and it'll be interesting to see how he plays, as he ran pretty well coming in after Leonard Fournette last week. So I'm going to go Ronald Jones as a top 10 running back this week versus the Panthers. They have a tough run defense, but I think Ronald Jones will help a lot of playoff teams this week and maybe even get them pushed over to the championship game with his great week that I believe he will have. All right, and Payton, what do you got?
All right, guys. So my hot take this week. This isn't really a definitive hot take, considering it's possible Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce play. But let's assume they don't. If Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce don't play, I'm gonna go ahead on the record and say that I believe Josh Gordon is gonna get a touchdown this week. I know it's a bit of a stretch, but he does have one this season. Only one, but he does have one. So with 2 receivers being out, Kansas City, they're gonna have to pull all the tricks out. So I think somehow Josh Gordon ends up in the end zone. So that's gonna close out for this week, guys. Good luck if you're in the semifinals. It's gonna be a tough week. We're gonna get through it. Congratulations to everyone that's still in, and I think that's gonna close out for this episode. Thank you for watching. I'm Payton Hedrick. I'm with Chris Langley and Jacob Reeder. See you guys next week.